If I'm a short-term investor, what should I be looking at? What should I be wary of?
You should be crossing your fingers. Good luck to the short-term investors. The challenge in this market right now is the macro forces are so large and they're so idiosyncratic and so unpredictable. We could have a tweet sometime in the next 10 minutes that sends the market plus 5% or down 5%.
When could we get to Bitcoin over $1 million?
Yeah, I think 5 to 10 years is about right. I think 1 or 2 more cycles. Look, a few things are true.
매트 휴거는 암호화폐와 상장 지수펀드 ETF 분야에서 세계적으로 인정받는 전문가로 현재 자산운용사 비트와이즈의 최고 투자 책임자로 재직 중입니다. 세계 최초의 인공지능 기반 ETF를 개발을 했으며 그는 최근 인터뷰를 통해 비트코인이 장기적으로 $100만 넘어설 수 있다고 전망하며 현재가 역사상 최고의 리스크 대비 수익 기회라고 강조합니다.
I think crypto is all about short-term versus long-term right now. Long-term, everything is lining up for a sustained bull market in crypto. We see continued flow into Bitcoin. We see continued loss of faith in institutions. On the Ethereum and other asset side, we see rise in stablecoins, rise in tokenization. All of that's looking great. But of course, we can't look past the short term. So most of us spent our weekend tracking the latest, over and back on tariffs, wondering how much macro chaos there will be in the market right now. I really think investors need to decide, are they short-term investors or are they long-term investors? Those have very different feels in the market right now, and that's sort of the mix I'm trying to weigh myself as I look at these markets.
If I'm a short-term investor, what should I be looking at? What should I be wary of?
You should be crossing your fingers. Good luck to the short-term investors. The challenge in this market right now is the macro forces are so large and they're so idiosyncratic and so unpredictable. We could have a tweet sometime in the next 10 minutes that sends the market plus 5% or down 5%. I think it's extraordinarily difficult to be a short-term investor in this sort of market activity. So I'd be monitoring the macro situation. I'd be monitoring every tweet coming out of Washington, and I'd be wondering what's going to happen next. Maybe keep an eye on the 10-year interest rate, on the dollar weakening. It's a very difficult environment, I think, for short-term investors.
Now, sticking with those short-term investors, I want to talk about U.S. President Donald Trump really flip-flopping on these tariffs. Talk to me about what that signals for you.
Yeah, I think in the short term, it's signaling just that this is a very volatile market. I think as you extend out a little bit, it can't be positive for the global economy in the medium term. That's what you're hearing from everyone out there. And you're in this difficult situation where we're clearly breaking something in the existing economy. We're clearly slowing down global trade. We're clearly weakening the dollar. We're clearly introducing uncertainty. That is a negative setback. And there's this waiting game to see when the Fed or the Treasury will step in to inject liquidity into the market, will give us a new sort of recovery program. The challenge about us, where we're sitting from a short-term perspective, is all the signaling coming out of the Fed and out of the Treasury is we're not going to do anything. The market is functioning. It may be challenged, but it's functioning. So whether it's former Fed governors writing pieces for Bloomberg, even Janet Yellen adding her thoughts on the market earlier today, they're all saying this is not the responsibility of the Fed and the Treasury. So I think investors are sort of playing this waiting game. When will people come to the rescue? And the people who usually come to the rescue say, not yet. And that, I think, gives us a negative bias in the short term. So if I were guessing, I think there's more risk than opportunity until we see the Fed or the Treasury ride to the rescue, and there's just no sign that they're planning to do that right now.
What's the likelihood you think that they do come to the rescue eventually?
Well, eventually the likelihood is 100%. Eventually they can't resist the big red button. They've been taught over time that when there is market uncertainty or economic uncertainty, you have to come to the rescue with liquidity. I think if we see more challenges in the Treasury market or a disorderly sell-off in the dollar, I think you'll see them step in. So it's going to happen eventually. But I do read from the signaling that it will be slower than many people expect. So this uncertainty could certainly stretch for days. Maybe it could stretch for weeks. Possibly it could stretch for months. I think we're in for a relatively significant period of volatility in the markets before those forces ride to the rescue. But make no mistake, eventually this is a political game and eventually they will ride to the rescue. It's just a matter of when. It will happen, but I think it could take a little bit longer than people have been conditioned to expect in the past.
Now, let's talk about those long-term investors. You said at the top of this interview that we are gearing up for a bull market or a bull cycle. Talk to me about what needs to happen for that to come to fruition.
I mean, there are any number of catalysts. So I'm extraordinarily bullish for the end of the year. I think we're going to see a relatively significant decoupling between Bitcoin and equities. I think you're going to see Bitcoin move to new all-time highs. And Bitwise's prediction from December of last year that we'll get to 200,000 on Bitcoin, I think still is plainly in sight. What do we need to have that happen? We need the macroeconomy to settle down a little bit. We need maybe one of these rescue packages to start to come into the market. I think if we see either of those things, this market is primed to rip. If you look at how Bitcoin in particular has been performing over this market pullback, it's done significantly better than in previous stock market corrections. Usually when there's a stock market correction, at least for the last 10 years, if the stock market is down 10, Bitcoin is down 30. Instead, this time, Bitcoin is more or less keeping pace with the equity market. To me, that's an incredible sign of resilience and strength. 2 years ago, if I told you that the global economy was falling apart and Bitcoin would be at $84,000, you would have laughed at me. And yet that's what we're seeing. So as soon as we see some signal that the economy is going to stabilize, that macro will get out of the headlines, I think we'll quickly be to new all-time highs. And if we do see any sort of stimulus or the Fed or the Treasury stepping in, I think it's off to the races and on towards Bitwise's $200,000 target.
You were doing some research on Bitcoin's performance during previous stock market pullbacks. Talk to me about what you found there. It felt a little bit like deja vu when I was reading what you found.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. I entered into Google to figure out what happened in 2018, and it said that the market pulled back due to Trump's tariff wars, weakening dollar, exactly the same things that we're living right now. And I think that's important for people to remember. We have been through these sort of market crises. We have seen what happens in the crypto market. Look, crypto is in a generational, multi-decade bull market. We can have these short-term challenges that set us back, but long-term, the forces powering this industry forward are going to overcome and overwhelm that. So it was fun to flash back a handful of years to the previous Trump presidency and see that, we have experienced this before and there is light at the end of the tunnel eventually.
One of the other big narratives, big headlines this morning is that of gold versus Bitcoin. Gold obviously up, I think about 20%, Bitcoin down. Talk to me about how you make sense of that and what that's telling you.
Oh, what that tells me is that Bitcoin's long-term price target is going up, right? Gold is a proxy for current demand for hard money assets, for store of value assets. When I look at Bitcoin's addressable market, I assume it's going to match gold in about 5 to 10 years. So as gold's addressable market goes up, the long-term price target for Bitcoin goes up as well. The reason Bitcoin is down is because it's both a hedge asset and an emerging risky asset. So what we've seen historically in the short term, when there's market volatility, you see Bitcoin pull back with all other risky assets. But in the long term, it catches up and then some. So every time gold sets a new all-time high, I cheer. It means that Bitcoin's ultimate all-time high is ticking up. It used to be 800,000. Now to match gold, maybe it's 1.1 million. I saw today there's a prediction gold could go to 4,500 out of, I forget, it was Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. If that's the case, you're talking about 1.5 million Bitcoin. So gold sort of forecasts the direction Bitcoin is going long term. Again, we just need this market risk to stabilize a little bit, and you're going to see Bitcoin catch up and then some.
We hear these bold predictions for Bitcoin, like $1 million, $1.5 million. Now, if you take what you've just said, looking at the price of gold in comparison to Bitcoin and what that tells you about Bitcoin's future, when could we get to Bitcoin over $1 million?
Yeah, I think 5 to 10 years is about right. I think 1 or 2 more cycles. Look, a few things are true. The vast majority of people who need to own Bitcoin don't yet own it at all. We need $1 trillion of buying into the Bitcoin market for institutions to just level up to a neutral portfolio. I think there's no way that happens without pushing Bitcoin's price up significantly. I'd also say, having watched various technologies over the past 20 or 30 years, everyone's always skeptical of the digital version of analog goods. But find me another industry where the digital version didn't just catch up, but eventually surpassed the physical good. It's happened in media, it's happened in advertising, it's happened in movies, it's happened in streaming. It's going to happen in store of value assets. So how long could it take? I think 5 or 10 years, right? Remember, 10 years ago, where was Bitcoin right now? It was 2014, it was trading for a few $100s. Today, we're talking about $100,000. It's not that hard to imagine that in 10 years, it's easily at $1 million or more. I think it'll happen by 2029, but it could be anywhere around then. But all the trends are pointing in that direction from where I sit.
Now, this is the last thing I'm going to ask you, if you were investing today as either that short-term investor or long-term investor, where would you be looking to put your money? And I think I know your answer given our discussion, but lay it out for me.
Look, there are two places I think are extraordinarily attractive right now. I think this remains the best risk-adjusted time to purchase Bitcoin in its history. We've removed a huge amount of risk. We've removed custody risk, trading risk, regulatory risk, government risk, and yet we still have 10x upside at a minimum. To me, that makes it an extraordinarily positive expected return from a risk-adjusted basis. I think any investor who doesn't have Bitcoin in their portfolio should take this pullback to establish that first position, at least get to 1 or 2% Bitcoin, maybe 10 more if you're more bullish.
매트 휴거는 단기 투자자들은 현재 어려운 시장 환경에 직면해 있으며 거시경제 때문에 시장은 예측이 불가능하며 말 한마디에 시장 변동이 심할 수 있다고 말하고 있죠. 또한 미국 연준과 재무부는 아직 구제에 나설 의지가 없어 단기적으로는 위험이 기회보다 크다고 경고합니다. 장기적으로는 비트코인 강세장이 명확하게 다가오고 있으며 과거에도 트럼프 관세 전쟁으로 비슷한 시장 혼란이 있었지만 결과적으로는 암호화폐의 성장을 얘기하며 비트코인은 100만 달러를 넘을 수 있다고 분석합니다. 우리는 객관적인 시각으로 투자를 해야 하고 지금 당장만 보고 투자할 게 아니라 미래를 보고 투자를 해야겠죠. 010-2472-0429 전화번호로 탈겜이 적어서 문자 보내주시면 2025년 비트코인과 코인 시장에 대한 분석, 정보들 공유해드리겠습니다. 현재 우리에게 중요한 것은 이러한 정보를 어떻게 활용할 것인가입니다. 지금까지 영상 시청해주셔서 감사하고요. 다음에 더 좋은 영상으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 감사합니다.